Hey there, Brian Hood here from the SixFigureHomeStudio.com. Today's video is all about getting paid for your work without having to have awkward conversations or having to chase down clients. Because in my opinion, there are not many things worse than finishing up a project that you've worked your ass off for and then facing that awkward money conversation. Or worse, having to chase down clients for weeks or months just to get the money that's already owed to you. This is the cause for a lot of stress for any studio owner. If you think about it, you have bills to pay. You've worked hard for weeks or months just to wrap up this band's project, but now they owe you money. And you can't pay your bills because of their lack of payment. And now this band is avoiding you just because they owe you money. Your relationship with the band is damaged due to no fault of your own. It's just you trying to do your job and trying to make ends meet. If you've ever been screwed over by a band or you've had to chase someone down for money, I'm sure you could relate to this. But what if I told you there's a way to avoid all of this? What if there were 4 simple rules that you could follow that would prevent this from ever happening again? That's what I'm going to teach you today. And by the way, if you struggle with the business of running your studio, go ahead and hit that subscribe button under the video, and I'll be posting a lot more like this in the future. So rule number 1 for getting paid without getting screwed or having awkward conversations is this: set expectations early. You're going to lay out how everything is going to work as soon as you have commitment from the band. As soon as they say they're ready to work with you, you're going to start laying everything out. Things like mentioning your non-refundable deposit, which we'll talk about in a second. Letting them know exactly when the remaining balance is due, which we'll also talk about in a second. And then talking about scheduling from start to finish. How is this all going to pan out from day 1 to day X? And finally, what exactly is included in the price and what is not included in the price? Does it include editing? Does it include mixing? Does it include mastering? Does it include lodging? This kind of stuff, laying all this out, is going to help eliminate a lot of headache down the road. And if they bail on you, after you laid all this stuff out, after you've had this conversation with them, you just eliminated what I call an unqualified prospect, someone that would have been a nightmare anyways. So do not feel like you missed out if they bail on you at this point. Rule number 2, take a deposit 100% of the time. Not sometimes, not most of the time, all of the time. A good goal for a deposit is somewhere between 30 and 50%. This is non-refundable deposit. That means they will not get their money back if they cancel on you or if they miss their dates. This deposit is going to reserve specific dates on your calendar, and we're going to talk about more on scheduling in a second. And the mindset behind this deposit is this: the band took up a chunk of your schedule, whether it's a day or a week or a month, and whether or not they show up, you still have bills to pay. You probably still have mouths to feed. So the deposit needs to be enough to cover your living expenses, whatever that number is, in the event that they cancel. So if they cancel this project, they lose their deposit, you still have money to pay your bills. And the only exception I've ever made is when there's a death in the family, and that is rare. I'm talking 1 to 2 times in your lifetime, in your career, you'll come across this. Now, if the band bails on you, but they want to rebook the dates, let's just say they cancel for whatever reason, or they have to reschedule, and they miss their original dates, this is what I call a judgment call. Most of us would rather get paid the remaining balance than to miss out on all of the money. So I usually offer a compromise to the band in this situation. If I can successfully fill up the dates that they canceled on me, then I will let them move their deposit to the new dates without any sort of penalty. But again, this is a judgment call. Rule number 3, require the remaining balance, whatever's owed, on the first scheduled date of services. So if you're doing recording or editing or mixing or mastering, before you start working on the project, they should have paid you 100% of what they owe. That's the 50% deposit and then the 50% remaining balance on day 1. This is why it's so important to lay out expectations in writing well ahead of time. It's because you can refer back to that writing if they have any sort of arguments about your policies. Otherwise, you're going to run the risk of pissing off a band because they conveniently forgot about when the remaining balance was due. But what happens if they come into the studio, they're actually in the studio with you and they're recording and they don't have the money for the remaining balance? Well, in this situation, I usually provide up to the value of the deposit before stopping work. That means if they are booking a month with me and they've paid a 50% deposit, I'll work up to 15 days before I'll tell them I just can't work on this project anymore. And this is because if you're a booming business with tons of projects, you have other obligations for the projects that did pay in full, people that don't owe you money. So don't feel bad if you have to stop work for a non-paying band in order to start working on a band that did pay you. But if you're still trying to get your career off the ground, then I get it. You'll probably want to be a little bit more lenient with this sort of stuff. So if that's the case, that's where rule number 4 comes into play. And rule number 4 is this: do not send out any work at all until the band has paid in full. That means don't send out rough mixes, don't send out masters, don't send anything out until they have paid in full. The second you decide to take an IOU as payment, this is exactly how you get into one of those awkward situations that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And the only exception to rule number 4 that I could possibly think of is when you're doing work for record labels. Most labels are not going to pay until the project is complete. It sucks, but that's the way it seems to be. So that's the only exception that I make for this sort of rule. So just to review all 4 rules here, rule number 1 is set expectations early and put it in writing. That way you can refer back to the writing if you have to, in the event that there's something conveniently forgotten. Rule number 2 is take a deposit 100% of the time, not just sometimes, not just most of the time, 100% of the time. Rule number 3 is require the remaining balance on the first scheduled date of services. And then rule number 4 is do not send off any work until the band has paid you in full. No IOU payments allowed. So when you set up all 4 of these rules and then you follow, that's the key to this, you follow those rules. This is an example of something that I call a preventative process. It's a process that's designed to stop problems from happening in the first place, stop them before they start. So these are problems that you will absolutely encounter if you do not put this sort of preventative process into place for your business. These 4 rules are going to eliminate the need to talk about or worry about money during the project, so you can just focus on the creative things. And this can be especially awkward when the band is in the studio with you. So this is going to be a very big deal if you can implement this correctly. It's going to eliminate the need to chase down money that's owed to you after a project's complete. It's going to eliminate the ability for bands to rip you off. So when now does it make sense for you to implement this? Well, that's the easy part. From now on, no matter what level you are, you should be implementing this if you're taking money from artists. If you're doing free work, obviously this doesn't apply to you, but if you're getting paid, you need to start implementing this today. Even if you hate talking to artists about money, even if you have a new studio and you're not sure if bands would pay a deposit, they will, by the way, and especially if you're working with your friends. Those are the relationships that you need to protect the most, and you have the most to lose. So this sort of stuff, having these strict policies in place, this is going to help guard you from damaging those personal friendships. But let me leave you with a word of caution. If you follow these 4 rules, that means you now have the ability to screw over the bands that you're working with if you don't deliver on your end of the deal. And if you do this, you will never make it. You will never ever make it in this industry. Short-term profits with dishonest methods equals 0 profit long-term. And also, working this way means that you can leave bands feeling screwed over, even if you do 100% of what you say you'll do. And this usually happens if you didn't properly communicate with the artist what was included and what was not included in the deal. So be sure to map out everything you include for the price of the project, like I said earlier, and be sure to exclude everything that you think they may expect of you, even if it's not even a service you provide. An example would be, do they think they're getting lodging on this project? Do they think that you're going to be doing editing if you're a mastering engineer, which never makes sense, but sometimes they expect that? Do they expect physical masters? Whatever else it could be, if in doubt, over communicate. If you want to see behind the scenes of my own business, 456 Recordings, which is where I am now, I made a video guide of something that I call my high-class proposal template. This is the proposal that I send out to every single band that I mix, and it covers every single thing that I mentioned in this video. It sets expectations, it explains exactly what's included, what's not included, what are my terms of service, what's the deposit, everything in there, and it actually will take the payment inside of the proposal software. It's really cool. And this is something that sets me apart from my competitors by standing out as someone who takes this stuff seriously, as a professional, right? So if you want this high-class proposal template, you can just go to this URL. It's proposals.studio. That's the URL, proposals.studio. I'll send you this template along with the video guide and the software that I use that allows me to see when someone opens this proposal, how many people open it, what device they're on, how long they spend on each page of this proposal template. Really cool stuff. And they can also sign the proposal and accept the deposit inside of this software. So you can take this template, you can adjust it to your specific needs, and you can start sending it out for every project from now on. Again, that URL is proposals.studio. Happy hustling.